Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you for choosing to join us today, and I'm hoping you are all fantabulous. Are you guys doing fantabulous?
Yes.
Fantabulous.
Okay. On each podcast, I will first be introducing our guest, sharing a short bio of their lives and careers, asking them questions pertaining to their careers, and then ending with their personal opinions of the current events that influence all of our daily lives as Minnesotans and as Americans. And my special guests, plural today, are White Earth Reservation Council member Henry George Fox, who recently won the District 1 representative seat, and Dana Collins, a tribal member and an advocate for White Earth families who were isolated during COVID. And I want to thank you both for joining us on the Downright Upright Show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okie doke. And before I begin, I'll be remiss if I don't congratulate Henry on your election to the District 1 representative seat. Henry, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You bet. And can you tell our listeners a little about your childhood? For example, where you were born and raised and went to school, Henry. We'll start with Henry.
Okay. I was born on the White Earth Reservation over on the north end over there by Bagley. And the village we grew up in was the Rice Lake Village. And there's two different areas of Rice Lake. If you come into the, what side would that be? The west side of Rice Lake, they used to call it Jack Pine. So we kind of lived up on the hill. They called us the big tall people that lived on the hill because we're all like 6-footers, you know. So. But then, you know, we were very involved with our community. And, you know, like I said, I was born at the Bagley Hospital, family doctor, back in 1964. And went to school, in Bagley, a non-native school, and made it through high school, made it through elementary, made it through high school, graduated in 1982, 1983, enlisted in the Army, and spent like 3 years in the Army. And
thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you. And did like 6 years of the Army Reserve out of Walker, Minnesota. And then we were the last unit out of that in 1989, and then I just said I had enough, you know. So I got dishonorably discharged, and we're honorably discharged.
Yeah, we got
to switch that.
Honorably.
It was honorably discharged out of there. And,
okay.
And it was, it was quite a, a thing to go to, serve the country. And because what they told us years ago was, we're dual citizens of the reservation and of the United States.
Yes.
And they told us, you guys, nobody ever told you guys had to go serve, but you should see the population of the Native American people that go serve. So, so family-wise, it was something that I felt I had to do. So. And me and my older brother, did it, and we were happy about it. So.
Oh yeah, well, thank you for your service. That's wonderful. And Dana, how about you?
Well, I was born in Minneapolis in 1966. My mother and birth father had 4 kids. When I was a toddler, he had left. A few years later, my mother remarried my stepdad, who raised us. We moved to West Central Minnesota, where they had 2 more. They had 2 more in Minneapolis, and then took 6 kids and them to West Central Minnesota in a town called Ashby. It's where I went to high school, elementary school, high school, from age 7 on up. Went to college in St. Cloud. It was then that I reconnected with my Native American White Earth roots. Interned at Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe in the 80s. This was before there was casinos. It was very poor and desolate, and I thought I knew poor being one of 6 kids. I learned poor in a totally different way, but I also saw how a community really came together to help each other out. After college, I graduated. My husband and I moved to the cities. We raised our family in Eagan. Put our 3 kids through college, Go Gophers. They're all Gophers.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Oldest one got her master's there. The second one went out east to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then our last one is applying for his master's somewhere. We'll find out. He was the lead of the rocket team that won the world champion. Again, Go Gophers.
Wow,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Big advocate of education with the Native American group. I've been involved as a para in the district. I was a licensed daycare provider before that for 12 years. I had a retirement job working retail, which I absolutely loved, but I quit because of COVID. It got very scary.
It was a tough time.
Yeah, it was.
Absolutely.
At that time, my husband and I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on this. So I started this drive, and it gave me something to do while helping our daughter out east plan her wedding.
Right.
So, yep.
Oh, awesome. So when did you both realize you wanted to be active in the White Earth community? Was there a particular incident that prompted you, or it was always in your soul that you needed to do something? Dana, we'll start with you.
So I have been involved with the Native communities down here in the cities just because of a 4.5-hour drive one way. It was, it was difficult. I didn't make the time, nor did I have the time raising 3 kids and being involved with activities to be involved, but COVID allowed that. What happened was we were traveling. I was traveling out east a lot. We have a daughter that lives in Washington, D.C., and she needed help planning her wedding, dress fitting, venue search, all of this. And I was scared to get on a plane because of COVID. I was in my 50s. I had never been back, couldn't get a vaccine. Vaccines here in the cities were difficult to get, unlike other states. I came across online that White Earth was vaccinating their members. So I spoke to my husband, and he said, if they can get us in, you in, just you, we'll drive up. And I said, okay. So I made a phone call, and they said, absolutely, come on up. So it was a 4.5-hour drive on one of the coldest mornings in winter of 2021. 41 degrees below zero.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah, it was cold. They not only vaxxed me, but they vaxxed my husband. While we were waiting for the 15, 20 minutes to make sure we weren't having an allergic reaction, I was speaking to a clerk who told me, she says, it is really, really bad up here. And just a side note about that, I came across some information the other day that supports that. Mahnomen County, which is completely encompassed in White Earth Reservation, is the poorest and has been the poorest county in the state of Minnesota.
Was their vaccination rate lower than the community at large, or
That is a good question. I cannot answer that. I
did you
just know
notice that it was accessible?
Well, what
up
was
there?
going on? It was very accessible. The fact is that people, they were coming in, they were driving up from the cities to get vaxxed because they couldn't get vaxxed down here.
Okay.
It was very interesting. What White Earth did is they go through the Indian Health Services. I read this online. They were going through the Indian Health Services versus the FDA to get the vaccines, so therefore they were able to get them quicker.
Oh, okay.
And they were vaccinating not only their tribal members, but people in the community, people in surrounding counties. They were just getting everybody vaccinated, doing their best.
Okay.
And so what happened is while I was waiting for my 15 minutes, I was speaking to a woman who was telling me how poor it is and how people have lost their jobs and people are desperate and there was 13 people living in a 1-bedroom home. And
Oh, boy.
resources were few and far between. My husband and I looked at each other and I said, we're coming up in a month, we've got to do something. Well, being that education is very important to us, I called Mahnomen Schools and I spoke to a principal who told me, we have a pool, but the kids don't have swimsuits. He says that is considered a luxury, and people have to drive to Fargo, which is well over an hour away.
Oh, boy.
Well, if you think about it, a lot of these people lost jobs. They don't have the monies to do this, to have them. They don't have the vehicles, the transportation to get there. So I put out a notice on Nextdoor app, and I asked people, would you be willing to donate? I did not I was hoping to get 20 to 30 suits. We collected, I quit counting, over 250. We got well over 250, probably right around 300. I can't be certain. I didn't count.
And you put smiles on all those children's
You know what? We
faces.
brought
That's
them
the
up,
big thing.
but not
Yeah.
only that, but people were donating clothing. People in our community, in the Ian community, in the surrounding suburbs, said, "Let's do more." They were sharing this amongst other communities. I heard from people in Hudson, Wisconsin. I heard from people in Minnetonka because they wanted to donate. Well, who am I to say no? We had the third stall garage. It was open. We had all these spare bedrooms because at this point, it was just my husband and I living at home. Our son had moved out. He was finishing his last year of college. We had this big house and lots of room, so let's do it. I did not expect what we got. It was
Wow.
incredibly generous and
Awesome.
incredibly wonderful.
Awesome, awesome. Henry, how about you? Was there a particular incident that prompted you to become more active in the community?
Well, I've always been, kind of active in whatever, even as a community member, helping people. Whatever it is they need, if they needed help with firewood, for the winter.
Right.
If I had a little bit of money, I'd help them out that way. Where I guess years ago, just trying to make a living myself, working at a sawmill for 15 years, and then having the addiction of alcoholism and other drugs, till I was probably 34 years old. And after that, because I knew I couldn't pick up my culture, because there's no room for that in our culture, and there never was. So after I became sober, I picked up my culture, the sweat lodges, pipe ceremonies, and powwows and stuff. I started attending and following that path, learning from some of my mentors, which most of them are up in the spirit world right now. And that was a little tough for me, of losing them. It was just like losing family,
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of asked myself, what am I going to do now? But then they came to me, everything comes to you in a dream. And they came to me and told me,
Wow.
everything's going to be okay. And you don't worry about us. What we taught you, you carry that on.
And this
So-
brought you to running for your position, right?
Yep.
This is this dream? Was it the
Yeah,
dream itself?
Well,
Wow.
I've always had that dream because my father, was a council member too back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Uh-huh.
And I always said I wanted, to follow them footsteps because he taught us everything.
Right, right.
And so that's what I did. And, everybody said, when you get certified after you, apply for running, that's when your campaign begins. Well, with me, it didn't. Mine was like 2 years ago. I started pushing, my campaign and I guess what I'm about and what, I can offer. I can't promise you nothing because I don't have nothing to promise. I just promise hard work and I'll be there for you, our people, so.
You came a long way. I mean,
Yeah.
after that addiction problem, and
Yep.
then you had that dream, and then it pushed you into the position. You must be. I'm very proud of you.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear of stories like that, it makes you. It gives you that good feeling inside that there are still people out there
It is, yep.
who care for each other, rather
Yeah.
than,
If anybody deserves this position, it's him.
well,
Yeah, like I say, I was, helping with food boxes and everything also.
Uh-huh.
I just read in the news that our preacher, she's a preacher woman, she actually got in an accident last night on Highway 59 over there by Wobbin.
Is she okay?
She's okay. She's home.
Thank God.
She
yeah.
said, thanks for all the prayers, but I didn't even know till I got up, so
Right, right.
I'll have to give her a call, but yeah,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was really helpful. She's a little short. Bernacki is her last name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with Henry this time. Initially, you were Community Safety Officer of Rice Lake Community on the reservation. And what were your duties and experiences, and what did you, issues that you encountered with that community at that time?
Well, I was the CSO, they called it, Community Service Officer, for the community of Rice Lake. And I did a lot of everything because I was also on the community council as their chair. And some of the things that we encountered, especially through the pandemic there, was food. How are we all going to get food? How
Is it
are
a
we all
food
gonna survive?
desert up there by and large, or especially during the pandemic?
During
or?
the pandemic, it was, because a lot of the stores weren't open. A lot of people got good money, from the unemployment and stuff. And, when it was really bad, I drew that myself, because I worked at the Shooting Star Casino in Mahnomen. And I did that for probably a short period of like 3 months. And then I said, I can't do this, I got to get out and see what I can do for the people. So then I worked with Jackie, and I worked with ENP, Elderly Nutrition Program, to say we need to still get this food to our people. So we were getting big pallets, we were using our truck, trailer, stacking them high, and bringing them back to the res. I only had one accident, and that was right towards the end, when it was pretty warm out. And I come around the corner by Roy Lake there, where I lived there, and then you head on 7 north there to get to Rice Lake. Well, I turned the corner kind of sharp and tipped over a couple pallets, and
Oops.
of course when they tip over, you got every dog in the neighborhood. Well, they got to eat too, everybody was saying so.
I love, he has a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
I'm
But-
sure Dana knows that.
Oh,
Yeah. And then the churches, became involved too, and they had food also too, so
Well,
we're,
and what happened in Buffalo. I'm sure you guys remember
The shooting?
they had a shooting up there. It was a food desert to begin with, and they had to close that store after the African Americans were killed in that store. It was quite a few people, and it just seems to me, and it just irks me. Makes me angry all the time when I hear it's always in a community of color or a marginalized community. Do you notice? Is it just me or?
no. If you know White Earth and these communities that he's talking about and the ones that we helped, they're isolated. Internet service is poor. Cell service is poor. If I text them, I was texting another CSO and she didn't get the message for a few days because it's that bad.
Wow.
It's just desolate, isolate. If you're lucky to have a convenience store in town, to go to Walmart in some of those in those cities, it's a 35, 40-minute drive. It's bad. Some of those
Wow.
kids drive 15, 20 minutes to go to school. His address is Mahnomen, but it's not really Mahnomen. It is probably about 15, 16, 20 miles. I don't know, something like that from Mahnomen.
Oh, boy.
It's north of Nato
Do the
Wash.
children have school buses, or how did they
Absolutely,
get to school?
absolutely.
Okay.
But it's few and far between.
I'm sure.
They
yeah.
have Circle of Life Academy in White Earth. It is a charter school, but they're making headways. It's amazing what they're doing. They have a great superintendent right now, Victoria Wend, who is making changes. You have Nato Wash Charter School. They're going through changes now too. It's an elementary school though. The high school is Mahnomen or Bagley. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so now this one's going to be for you, Dana.
Sure.
As a tribal member, and you've volunteered your time, especially during the COVID pandemic, delivering clothing, toiletries, household items, and among other things to the community. What are some experiences you have encountered in doing that work that you would like to share with our listeners?
First of all, the people down in our community of Egan and the surrounding area, Dakota County, it goes as far as Hudson, Wisconsin, Minnetonka. People couldn't have been more generous. I never anticipated this. I've lived in Egan for over 30 years.
By the way, interrupt. I want to do a land acknowledgement because I didn't do that. And
Okay.
with Native people, I'd like to do that. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of,
I think Lakota,
is
right?
this Lakota? In the Dakota County area?
down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two There's two down here, the Shakopee. Well, there's Shakopee, then further over is Morton, Lower Sioux.
Okay.
So
We just want to acknowledge them. I'm sorry to
Right,
interrupt
right,
right.
that,
Oh, yeah,
'cause I
yeah.
was going to do
Minda,
that.
Waukon, Sioux, and then there's the Prairie Island.
yep, Prairie
Those are the
Island's up there,
closest.
too.
And then there's one in Wisconsin, isn't there? Right across the border, I thought. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few up there. They got, Red Cliff and Bad River, I think, reservations close too. So
Sure.
Okay.
we have 11 tribes here in Minnesota,
In the state of Minnesota, the whole state.
the whole state.
Federally recognized tribes, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry about that, Dana. I
No,
just wanted to
no,
get
no.
that out there because some of our listeners that live in Dakota would like to
So
know.
it started off with swimsuits, but it turned into more than that because people down here were saying, can we give more? And it's like, well, who am I to say no? The need is great. I've seen it. Let's make another trip. So after the second vax, we dropped off at the schools. I was involved with the housing development. It's for lower income housing in Nadawash. Had no idea I had relatives over there because I didn't know them. We dropped off, and then we dropped more off, and then we continued dropping off. It's interesting because the community members didn't quite know how to take me. They thought, what does she want? People don't just drop things off. They always want something. Well, it's just continued.
That's a sad state to think
Well,
of.
think about it. Can you blame them?
Well,
It's healthy skepticism. I mean, with everything that they've gone through, with what
Sure.
we've gone through, I guess.
absolutely. Yeah.
Once they realized, hey, I'm a White Earth member, I just want to help, it was a totally different mindset. We would go in, we would drop off. It got to the point that my uncle up there said, you got to go to Rice Lake, you got to go to Pine Point. That's how I met Henry. And we've made at least 40 trips, probably 50, not just to the reservation, but even up to Little Falls, to St. Cloud, to Wadena. And I would meet a CSO and unload what's in the car, and they would bring it into the communities, and they would drop off as needed. Last year, I was asked by a community council member in Nadawash, is there any way we can do furniture? Well, we had the space in the garage. I didn't know where this would take, but I figured, what's a few sofas? Well, that morphed into something beyond anything we could have imagined. We had 3 bedrooms full, the laundry
No
room
way.
full, the dining room full. That we had a.
That's beautiful.
My husband rented out a storage facility. He looked at me. He said, "Lady, I've told you can do anything you want when you set your mind to it." It was one of those things that we would come home from a trip, and there would be a driveway full of clothes, and our neighbors are standing there scratching their heads. What's going on over there?
Oh my God.
We collected over 20 sofas. We've collected over 25 beds, tables, toiletries beyond anything just to help these people get through COVID. A lot of these families were displaced, so they're moving back. One of the last stories, conversations I had with Pine Point, their CSO told me, she says, that load of furniture we picked up from you, that didn't go to Pine Point. And I said, where did it go? And she said there was a family sleeping on a basement floor in an apartment in Waban. They needed a sofa, they needed a bed. That's where those went. And if that's what it takes, so be it. Let me be the vessel. It's not me, it's not. It's just, there are people put in places to help, to be that connection. And if
Absolutely.
you have that opportunity, do it.
Yeah, I just had an interview a couple of episodes ago with a friend of mine. Her name's Lisa Metwali. She wrote this book about kindness travels, meaning if one person does a kind act to someone, then that person has that feeling of like, wow, somebody came and helped me. They go and do that kind act,
Right.
and it starts becoming a chain.
And we need that. We need that now,
I know.
more than ever.
And I think that is amazing, and I love Minnesota for that. I mean, I hear a lot of that happening in all the communities, in the African American community, in the indigenous communities, LGBT. I remember growing up during the AIDS crisis, and people didn't know how AIDS was spread in those days.
Right.
So when gay men were getting AIDS, nobody would go near them. They were in their apartments by themselves, no food, no way to go outside because they were afraid to be seen. And the only thing was how kindness from other people.
Right.
They would go and deliver them. They had Meals on Wheels programs. They gave them food. They donated whatever they needed, medications, whatever. And I think that's what's lacking. And I love the fact that you, both of you, are doing something for your community. We need to get that message out there
Right.
that we need more people like you. Thank you, guys. That's why I'm so
Absolutely.
honored to have you today.
Well, the energy that you get from doing this too is beyond anything.
Oh, absolutely.
I've taught Sunday school for 22 years and/or confirmation. That pales in comparison to
Oh,
this.
yeah. It's not. What's not far from the truth, Henry, is that when you do a good deed for someone, sometimes it's better to. You heard that expression. Sometimes it's better to give than to receive, and some people get that high from giving.
Mm-hmm.
And those are what I call good people that rather give than get. And you guys, what you do is just fascinating to me. And again, having you here is just
Right.
amazing.
The last trip I took, my husband actually took last Monday off, and I said, let's just get the last of the stuff up because we have a daughter's wedding coming up next month, and we got to make room for people coming to stay with us.
Well, you know what, you guys, after we do the podcast, we put like a little website
Sure.
next to your podcast, so people can click on there and do volunteer
Right.
work or donate or do whatever needs you have. Is it still going to be clothing and food, Dana?
So I'm going to be pulling away for a little bit just because of this wedding and just for some R&R for 18 months. We've been doing it, and it's been 40 to 50 hours a week at times, 4 trips a week at times. It's like my husband said, you got to pull back just a little bit.
Just a
Just
little
pull
bit,
back.
yeah.
Well, we'll see. But
You can't save the world by yourself, Dana.
Exactly. Once I make contact with some people up there, now that my friend Henry is on the council, once we make connections with the communities, within the communities for people to help, we'll start up again. But last trip we made up there, it was funny because it started off with these trips that I would go up and I would drop off at these buildings, and people would stand there scratching my head thinking what she's doing. Now it's to the point that we're 5 miles out of town and we're being followed because they're excited to help. What takes us 20 minutes to half an hour to load up the car, it takes less than 5 minutes to unload and get everything out.
Awesome.
That's, people, they know we're coming, and I can't say enough. All the
Yeah,
communities.
Great. So, Henry, this one's for you.
Okay.
You have firsthand experience dealing with tribal members who have addiction issues, who are fighting homelessness, who lack adequate health care they require. What are some examples of those problems that you are comfortable sharing with our listeners? And what are you doing in your capacity as tribal representative to alleviate the negative impact of those issues?
Yeah, I guess, that's my big thing in my campaign was sobriety, because it comes back to me, 1999, I finally went into treatment, and it actually, I didn't use AA, and a lot of people were telling me, if you don't go to AA, you're never going to make it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've been using my culture and my tradition for 23 years now, and something must be working, because
So they have their own kind of explain it, because I don't
yeah,
wanna
they have
mislead.
they have this, remember way back in the day, the big book, the 90 meetings in 90 days, that wasn't me. That probably would have drove me right back to the drinking, so I just used, what worked for me. How I got sober was when I was in treatment, I went to a sweat lodge, and just coming out of there, my outlook on alcohol and drugs was like really changed drastically. I hate it. Still to today.
So you're 23 years sober now, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very nice.
And then I worked in that field, probably for 16 years. And I started out, at a halfway house back in 2000, and then I went into being a outpatient counselor, or kind of a driver first, and I moved in the counseling position. And then one day for the tribe, I decided to go out to a treatment center they were running. It was called the Women's Wellbriety Center, where women could bring their children. And that was right off on 200 there, probably 10 miles east of Nolman there. And I went there and just did the evaluation of the program. They said, why isn't this place making any money? So I went up there and I just sat there, you know, and observed. And the first day I was up there, they handed me like 5 client files, you know, and I grabbed them and I went back, you know, to White Earth. And then my director said, what are them? And I said, I don't know, they just gave them to me. And I was out there and she goes, oh no, you bring them back. You're not counseling out there, you know. And I said, oh, okay. So I brought them back and said, I'm not counseling, so I'm just observing. And then I got, you know, I was out there for like 2 weeks just doing like, you know, evaluation of the program. And then I went back, you know, after my report was done, I handed it back in and they said, thank you, you know, this is very much appreciated. And they looked at it. Then in 2 weeks, they offered me the position of the program manager out there.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, well, I didn't do this where anybody lose their job, you know.
Right.
And they said, no, she was going to retire anyway, so.
So you fell right into your lap,
Yep.
basically.
So
Good.
then from there, it was just, you know, what I did see with all of that was a revolving door. You know, they just kept coming back, coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they got older and they did quit, but then you seen their children coming through. And everybody was wondering, like, in children in treatment, like we got quite a few on the res now. Circle back, and we have another one in Bemidji over at Oshki. But what they really ran into, and they keep running into, is these kids would never show up. And I told them, I said, you know why these kids don't want to show up? Because them parents don't want you to find out what they're doing, you know?
Oh.
So, you know,
Well,
it kind of
that's
gets,
interesting.
yeah, it kind of gets parents kind of, you know, in uproar, you know, but let your kid go, you know? I mean, I don't care if you're using or not, but we want that kid not to.
Exactly,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you would think the parents would, you know,
Yeah.
understand that.
Exactly. And then, you know, I worked off the reservation too as a program manager for like Brainerd Care 4 Winds there. It was a state-run program. I was there for like 3 years, and then they told me that they were in negotiation with Mille Lacs going to purchase the building, you know. And I said, well, you know, my dad was sick anyway back at home, so I said, you know, I think I'm just going to move back home. Because they told me, you know, your job's safe, you know, and everything. I lived in Brainerd. I owned a house back home. And I said, why am I paying rent, you know, when I own a house, you know? So I moved back home and, you know, sat with Dad, his remainder of his, I think he only lasted a year when I got back home. So,
Sorry.
yeah.
So, this is like a part of the show where you know, again, I'm going to plead ignorance here. You know, I know there's issues that I couldn't possibly come up with that I can, you know, bring. So let's start with Dana. Are there any issues that you would like to talk about that pertain strictly to the Native community in your area that need to be addressed, or even in the area where Henry is, and talk about that?
It's not just in the cities, it's everywhere. There's this belief that natives don't care for the education that they're getting. I'm a big proponent of it. I truly, it got me out of poverty, getting that college degree. However, just get that high school degree. You don't need a college degree, maybe a trade school if you need, but even a GED, get that education, complete it, be done.
Absolutely. The trade school, actually, some of these trade schools, like plumbing,
Exactly.
electricity, they're making more than teachers.
What
and-
people don't realize is that the Native community is the lowest performing. You don't hear about that because there's not enough of us, apparently. The lowest performing ethnic group when it comes to test scores. Parts of the White Earth community, it's under 50% graduation rate in high school. I've heard as low as 17%. Usually it's right around 35, 36%.
Do you attribute that to anything in particular?
Well, I
or-
think COVID has a large part to do with it, but there's other avenues too. There's possibly drug dealing, drug issues. I don't know the details.
Okay.
I think Henry can answer that more. I know down here I have seen drug use. I have seen kids just not having the resources,
Right.
and being embarrassed, being teased, being picked on. Yes, natives still get picked on in
Wow.
school. My oldest came home from school because she is part native. She's not as much as I am, but she is darker than I am. She came home and said, so-and-so said the reason we live in this big house in Egan is because you get casino checks. And I laughed. I wish.
Me too.
We are not the Minnewacan Sioux. They
Yeah.
are one of the, I think if they're not the most profitable by member, they also help other tribes, including White Earth, keep programs afloat.
Thank God. Yeah.
White Earth is one of the poorest. And, I think there are no casino checks there. The other thing that I want people to think about is the real history. Think about teaching the real history in the schools. Teaching about what happened to natives, the genocides, the mission schools. That is another thing. Yes, we've had mission schools in the United States. Children were murdered. Children were plucked out of their
I
homes.
definitely want to talk about that later, definitely.
right,
Because
and-
it's not just Canada. People think it's just
yeah,
Canada.
Yeah, that's
It's-
nobody wants to talk about that. I have told people, no, we have them here.
We
University
had
of Minnesota.
500 or something?
We had over 500. Oklahoma is actually doing a study or an investigation right now. I think they were at 800 deaths so far, something like that.
Oh, my
I saw
goodness.
over the summer. However, University of Minnesota Morris was a big boarding school. So people think that all natives get free education. That is not true. Now at that school, absolutely, because it was a boarding school. I guess the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is now offering that to any federally recognized tribal member. That just started, so I'm happy about that. I just think that people need to understand that there's more history than what we've been told,
Okay.
what we've grown up with. So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Dana. So, Henry, are there any issues that you would like to bring forward that I may not have touched on that are really something you would want the listeners to know about your community?
Our community, is probably the third biggest community on the reservation. We have a lot of other smaller ones that, they always say they get left out. You got like Ebro, you got Pine Bend, Bajou, and Bolio. Also in that, then Rice Lake, and then there'll be South End, kind of, I live on 200, and the big thing to us is the big Rice Lake, that we have. And that's where we get a lot of our rice every year, except for last year. Last year was pretty droughty. And
For our listeners, just to edify, it's wild rice.
Yes.
wild
So-
rice, yeah.
Just so, because maybe there's some people that are listening that are not from
yeah.
Minnesota
Okay.
that don't
Yeah.
know that. Okay.
And wild rice is, in Ojibwe is Monoman. Monoman. That's
Monoman.
what they call
Okay.
it. Yeah. And, we're battling, just like, I'm sure everybody else has a battle, kind of like last year with our drought and with the big Line 3 going through. Like right up on, the reservation and stuff. And we had protesters, and everything where, I even joined a couple of them, on certain days, and we had prayers and stuff, but I just told them, I said, they already got it planned. It's going to happen no matter what we do. I said, but we can make noise, So with that coming
And it's
in now.
not just happening in Minnesota, it's happening everywhere in the
Right.
United States
Yep.
right now, yeah.
And then and then right now though it opened up more doors to us where we got a historian now that works for us with like our bones coming back. Like if they make new roads somewhere and they find some bones and they're White Earth, they bring them back. We got some nice little cemeteries that they built for that. And with that will be the boarding schools too, that the bones will be coming back too. So
Right. Oh.
and they'll be pretty full probably. But right now, we're making, these sites, especially our wild rice sites, we're making them historic sites. So whenever anything else like that wants to come in now they got to ask us permission.
Awesome.
Just like the draining of the water, they do roads and everything, even the pipeline. Well, there was a agreement in place, and it was last revisited back in 2001. So right now, with the new people on board with White Earth, we're going to push for both of them, and we're going to redo that deal of saying, if you take water from our river or our lake, you got to ask us. So,
What could the government do, you think, to help you in this effort? Is there anything they can do? Because pipelines again, aren't they mostly private companies that do
Yeah.
this?
Yep.
So can't the government step in and do something?
well, they could, like Biden stepped in and
Well, he did, yes.
yeah, and put a stop to that one, and now they're
But then you hear that. But then if
Yeah.
you watch Fox News, you think that it was the worst thing since
Yeah.
the Holocaust. Yeah,
Yeah.
and but people don't understand. It's like, what if you saw your loved one being dug up? I
Exactly.
mean, they don't understand that concept at all.
You know what? They don't care. I hate to say it that way. I've talked to several people and say, oh, they're just blowing smoke. It's like, no, they're not.
No.
Do you want somebody putting one through your backyard? Really?
Thank you
Really?
very much. And this is why, again, I can't keep saying it. I have you guys here because I want people out there to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The truth shall set you free.
You give the native people land, the reservations, but yet now you're going to run pipelines through it.
Yeah.
Really?
So what's up with that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to just share one more thing with that.
Oh, sure.
Right now, with the Line 3, well, there's still pipe underground, that they're not using from the last line. So now they're asking, the people, that the line went under, do you want it to stay there, or do you want it taken out? And what they do with the empty line pipe there, they fill it up with some foam or something, and then they leave it. So White Earth right now is saying, no, we want it dug up, So
Okay.
so you're going to dig it up without the least amount of contaminants, that.
Yeah. I mean, they don't
Because-
realize that that's not healthy what
Well,
they're putting in those
yeah.
pipes,
Well,
right?
not only that, but NPR did a study or did a story. They said that last year, I think it was June or August, if you look it up online, you'll be able to find it. It wasn't just NPR, it was other news areas that shared, which didn't really make the news, 28 different times or 28 different spots where drilling fluid
Yeah.
contaminated
That's
the water.
what I mean. Yeah. Drilling fluid. That was
But
the word I was looking for.
But Enbridge says that it's safe and they're not doing that and it's going to be better, 28 times in just a few months. What else?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's, we met with, the people from the Capitol and everything down here. They came visited us, and they actually have, some lawsuits on them right now because the way they did it and everything, because they go back, I don't know how many years to see if vegetation grows or whatever else. So.
I don't know. It boggles the mind how people, are so selfish, and they, they don't understand that there's other communities that are being influenced by this.
As
and-
long as it doesn't affect them.
Well, that's it. Not in my backyard, right? Remember
Yeah.
that expression?
Yeah.
Anyway, I recently interviewed Governor Jim Carlson.
Yep.
I think he was the last podcast that I did before yours. And he introduced a bill appropriating money for a monument, I don't know if you know this, to missing and murdered Indigenous women. Did you know that? And my question to you would be, why do you think this is happening more often in Native communities than in the overall community at large? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I pulled up some facts because that's what I do. My husband always says, just state the facts. So here are the facts. We all know the name Gabby Patino. We all know the name Jody Huisentruth. Okay. Do we know about Nevia Kingbird? Have you ever heard of her?
No.
Okay. What about, what is her name right here? There was a woman that went missing in Duluth in August of 2015. Sheila Sinclair. She was a 54-year-old
Yeah, I think
woman
I've
that
heard
was
of her.
leaving her apartment. Very similar to Jody Hughes in truth, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We don't hear about these. The truth is, the Star Tribune, was it not too long ago, actually? The Star Tribune, Minneapolis Star Tribune, in March of 2022, did a story, and they said between 2012 and 2020, each month, 27 to 54 Native American women, each month. Not a year, each month, 27 to 54 Native American women would be murdered or
Or
go
missing.
missing.
Wow.
And think
Per
about
month.
per month. And think about the percentage of Native American women versus any other ethnic group
Wow.
of our
And you don't
population.
hear this stuff on the news at all, do you?
No, no.
Anyway.
And I'm happy that Jody, who's in truth, has all this attention, and Gabby Patino. But what about Nevia? She's still missing. October. She's a 15-year-old that came from Bemidji. They've deemed her a runaway. Is she a runaway? I don't know.
Right.
Nobody's heard from her.
Henry, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's a big, one over there in Bemidji area of, Nevaeh, I think's the name.
Is it Nevia?
Heaven spelled backwards, I think.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And we also have one up in our district up there, a young lady, a mother of probably 3 and really young, was at our casino one night and got kindly over intoxicated,
Uh-huh.
And I don't know what's going on. We got to look into it ourselves as a new council of saying, how can somebody get that intoxicated at our casino and walk out of there? And then she got about a mile away, got hit by a car kept going, and she ended up on the other side of the road, so another car came and ran her over. And that's
my
probably
goodness.
what killed her.
Right.
So right now, they're looking for, the ones that did run her over first, but they
What
really.
road was this on again?
It was on County Road 7 over there.
Oh, okay. All right.
By our new casino, our Bagley Casino they call it.
Right.
Yeah, and every year they do a memorial for her. They go to her boyfriend's house with the kids, and they'd have a big potluck dinner, and stuff, and games, and just tell stories. And then just before it gets dark at that time, they do a walk from the casino to that corner. And last year, I was really a big part of it, and it was really fulfilling for me, just to know that. Right now, still getting though, you're friends with them, and it's like, well, it ain't like I'm not friends, we're all close together there, we're probably related, so I hope they get caught. I said, but, from now till then, I will help you guys any way I can. And what I did was I ordered some of these MMIW women. A guy cut them out for me on his little laser thing there, and they stand about 4 feet tall. And then I had her cousin, who was a painting, artist. She painted them for us. And then we gave them to each of them women, because we don't only have one. We have one years ago that was 2 sisters that burned up in a car. And they can't find out who did that either, and
Well, going back to that monument, do you know if it was built yet, or if it's there, or what the story
I have
is?
no idea.
I don't think it is yet, but like I say, we're working, like Wellstone too. Paul Wellstone,
Right.
the one that got killed in the train
Yes,
thing there.
yes.
His son's actually doing some kind of thing. What did they call it again? We actually, as a tribe, bought into it
Okay.
because we pay them every year for like an app It's an app they do. We pay them every year, and we've been paying them every year. Well, the new council came on, and we said, why are we paying them every year?
Yeah.
Why aren't we into it, like a business? So that's what we actually did now. We gave them, I don't want to say the millions, but
Right.
we bought into it, and then in years to come, when money gets made, it comes back to us.
Right.
Fabulous.
It's
Then
a-
I'll get a check, right?
It's a very healing. See, because I went down to Minneapolis right after George Floyd was murdered.
Yeah.
He was murdered.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't care what you say. He was murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, oh, he was
No,
fighting.
he was
wasn't- no.
definitely murdered.
He was murdered, and they have a monument to him there now. Actually, it's not. I would say it is to him, but it's to every person that
Right.
was killed unjustly in this country, and I think the Native peoples need one as well. I mean, we need to have these women remembered. We need to have some place to go to put our thoughts and prayers and place flowers or whatever healing process you have,
Right.
so that these women are remembered, because they were vital to the community. They were someone's mom, sister, aunt.
I think that would be
Beautiful.
part of their healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they ever find out,
Absolutely.
because I know with the Sheila St. Clair one too, I was actually working at the treatment center in Bemidji, the Oshkimani do there. New Spirit, they call it. And she came up because her daughters were in treatment there, and, we did everything we could, to try to get closure for them. And
Yeah.
They actually got a lead one time, you
Yeah.
know, but I don't know where it went to.
Well, the gay community too. I mean, I was like, I
Right.
think you guys know, I was born and raised in New York.
Right.
I remember older gay men when I was living there telling me stories about Stonewall, and that's our monument. That's where gay people go from all over the world go to remember those men that were beaten and raped and by cops. And the stories I could tell you, I don't want to say on the air because it's so brutal that you wouldn't believe if I told you. In the paddy wagons, them sticking billy clubs in their, places, and these men were telling me these stories with tears in their eyes about the inhumanity. And so I get this monument thing. I get it, and I think that, and I hope the two of you work on that, or we can get someone to do that, because everyone needs healing. Everyone needs a place to go to remember people and to understand the history
Right.
of your people. And so thank you. If you do that, I'm sure I'll be the first one there with you. I'll go with you. Anyway, so now we've come to the part of the show I like to call the shift, where I shift the questioning away from your involvement with the White Earth Reservation and into your opinion of current events. And so this is the shift part of the show. Every show I do this. It's just a way of getting more current events involvement and your opinions.
Right.
So we're going to go into your opinions of certain issues. And the first one, obviously, I want to talk about is the Pope.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you guys think about the Pope's apology to the Indigenous people of Canada regarding boarding schools for Native children? And as Dana already mentioned, there were over 500 such schools in the U.S. as well.
Right.
As we don't talk about that, but let's just talk about the Pope for a minute. What's your opinion about finally having a Pope
Why
even
did
mention it?
Why did he wear a headdress? Why was he allowed to wear a headdress? That's sacred.
Yeah, I don't.
That is-
I saw that. Yeah, that was.
That's. I don't know how you feel about it, but I saw that and I'm like, no.
Yeah,
It was a little jarring. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
I was out in California last week for a self-governance conference, and there was a guy that was like the MC, but you couldn't see him. He was behind a curtain or something, but he kind of, made a little joke about that we're having this conference, but we're not going to put a headdress on a pope here this week, so. And when I seen that, that's totally what I thought was, why are they disgracing, our headdress?
Was that his idea, or was that?
I don't know,
did
because-
people-
Who knows? Who knows?
I'll share a story. I was getting my hair cut back probably 10 years ago, in a local town there. And this guy told me he had a headdress. And I said, really? I said, what kind of headdress? And he goes, oh, it's white, got black, on the tips of it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, do you think I could see it? And he goes, well, I'll call him. Maybe he will. So he called the guy, and the guy came from a neighboring town, and I waited for him.
Yeah.
And he brought this headdress out. He was a non-native, we call him Chimukaman, but white,
That's an
Caucasian.
inside joke, I guess.
Yeah. but he
My
had
husband.
Yeah.
Your husband is a. What was the word again, so the listeners can remember?
I'll let
that?
Henry say it.
Chimukaman.
Okay.
Chimukaman.
Yeah.
I had a cousin named Chimuk. We called him Chimuk, but he was enrolled too. But he looked more Chimuk. So, but he came over with that headdress, and that headdress was an authentic 30 feather, black tip eagle feather. And I asked him. I said, "Where did you get this?"
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I had it hid for like 30 years. He said, I got it from a guy down in Roar Lake, kind of where I lived there. His wife was battling cancer. And I seen him at the store down there one day. And he sold it to me for $700. And I said, well, can I take it, just to see if I can find out, where it come from or whatever, because it had number 2 on it. So I took it to the historian and all my mentors, and they didn't have no clue. So then I had to take it into ceremony. So I went into ceremony with it, and the guy told me them feathers were coming back to the family. He goes, and it was probably your grandfather that made this. So he goes, what I got to tell you is that guy cannot get this back. He goes, but you make him a bundle and you make it plentiful for this guy. So I knew the guy because he watched me play basketball when I was in high school. He goes, you were the best player to come off that race, And I said, well, okay, here's the deal. I said, I can offer you a gift bundle, but I can't give it back. Oh, that's fine. So I give him like a utility trailer. I give him a nice 30 Savage pump
But
rifle.
isn't that amazing that that he understood how meaningful that was,
very nice.
and he didn't argue about it. He
Star
was,
quilts. I give him wild rice and everything, and
Nice.
he was okay with that.
Very
you know.
awesome.
So I still got that today. So
Yeah.
I can't use it for show or nothing, so I'm not going to put it on a pope. So
No, exactly.
Right. So, Peggy Flanagan, our lieutenant governor here in Minnesota, she is of the White Earth Nation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do either of you want to talk about her? Did you ever meet her? Or
I've never met her, no. But I was watching her come up. Our son was in high school, and I was working with the Native Advocates, or volunteering with the Native Advocates, and I said, "You've got to get her to speak at the ceremony they had for Native kids graduating." And they said, "Well, who's that?" And I said, "She's going to be the next lieutenant governor." And there she is.
I just had a podcast a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson being the first African American on the Supreme Court. Now, little girls will look at her and go, someday I can be...
We need a Native one. We need a Native woman.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? Now Native little girls can look and say,
Right.
I can be a lieutenant governor of the state of a state.
Exactly.
So these images, these people
Right.
are definitely role models for people. And I think it's amazing that she, that we have someone like Peggy Flanagan who can, little girls that are living in the Native community will look at her and go, I'm going to grow up and be lieutenant governor like Peggy Flanagan,
And leave it to a Native. I mean, she grew up poor herself. I think Natives tend to be the most resilient people.
Mm-hmm. And she's smart as a whip.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep,
Oh
yep,
yeah.
yep,
That was the perfect choice that Governor Walz
Right.
chose her because I've heard her speak and she's amazing.
yes, I knew her father, more than I know her.
Oh, okay. Can you want to talk a little, just shortly
that was,
about it?
Marvin Minniepenny was her father, and Marvin had the Constitution, of MCT. He knew a lot, and he taught a lot of people. When I was actually on the election board before, listening to Marvin come in and talk and everything, and even as a younger guy, just because he lived right in White Earth there. He just passed on here now, probably about maybe 2 years ago now.
Oh, okay.
From the disease that usually pretty much gets a native is diabetes. So I know him. I know the family. I haven't really met her, but I hear a lot of good stuff about her, and I'm glad we do have a White Earth enroll member in that position.
That's great.
And that's what my uncle. I got an 86-year-old uncle, telling me, if you need any help to go anywhere else, he goes, let me know. And I'm like, what does he want me to be governor? No.
Yes.
Maybe you'll run one day, right, Henry?
Yeah, really.
As you know, both of you, the Republicans are complaining
Oh, yeah.
that gas prices are high because the Keystone Pipeline was canceled by this Biden administration.
Sure.
This is oil that wasn't even intended for American consumption anyway. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And but it would have been used for sale overseas, so it's more for making money for the oil companies. Aren't many of these pipelines actually being run through sacred native land? And I think you talked about one in Minnesota.
Yep.
Could you want to just touch on that briefly? Because I think you
Yeah,
did
that was
mention
the
it.
Line 3,
Line 3, right.
It was going through no matter what, no matter what the path was. So.
Is it there now?
Yes.
Did it run through? And
Yeah.
is there any movement on getting it removed or taken?
No.
No?
No.
It's there.
It's there.
Well, maybe we
pumping
should
oil.
all be writing letters to our...
So if you want to see more stuff about that, if you what is it, the Netflix or Showtime? It's Showtime. It's called The Circus. It's that political show. Mm-hmm. They did a story on that, one of them in the last
Okay.
season. I believe CBS did it. Was it 60 Minutes? Somebody else did one too.
Okay.
So it is gaining momentum. There has been talk about it, but it's still there. The line is still there, and it's not going anywhere. It's
Maybe
not.
our listeners could write some letters to the the powers that be and have that pipeline removed and get it out of there. Because
Right.
especially if it's holy land.
It's sacred. The water can be
sacred.
contaminated. It's just
It's 100 million reasons why it shouldn't
Right.
be there. Yeah.
Yep.
So I just wanted to bring that out there to make sure that our listeners know that this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
Another question is, will abortion access to Native women still be available on reservations since the U.S. government has no control over those communities, or does it have control over those communities?
So we had talked about this earlier. The thing is that on the tribal lands, as a tribal member, we are able to get free health care on the reservation through the
Reservation, yeah.
Indian Health Services. That is a subset of the Human and Health Services, which is as part of the federal government, which is federally funded. Because of that, abortions aren't done on there. So yes, it is a sovereign nation, but that is one of those areas that it is not. Was reading about this. CNN actually wrote about this on June 26th of this last year when R v. Wade, it had come out, I think the Thursday before. Coincidentally, my husband and I were out in Washington, D.C., dog sitting for our granddog, for our daughter. And we woke up that morning, took the dog for a walk, and I said, I got to get down to the Capitol because you're hearing about all the stuff on the local news, what's going on. There was people protesting for it, people protesting against it. So on a Sunday morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, we took the metro down there. We went down there. We supported it. Capitol Police were great. People from all over the world, didn't matter what your background was, didn't matter if you were male or woman. We saw grandmothers with their daughters, with their granddaughters, with their great-granddaughter babies. We saw people from Finland. We saw people from England, from Australia, Africa supporting it. We saw gay couples. We saw everybody. We saw transgender. Because I think these people realize what is next.
Oh, it's a slippery slope, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't, 2-3 weeks later, we heard that they're talking about rescinding same-sex marriage. So, yeah.
And transitioning to the LGBT community, as you know, I am a member of that
Right.
community, and I'm a fierce proponent of equality for all people. I'm wondering how LGBT people are treated in the Native community and what special obstacles they face.
Yeah, I guess, with the LGBT community, I'm a, very big supporter of that, because I have it in my own family. And, my daughter was kind of, leery of how I'd react, when she did finally come up and tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told her, that I said, what can I do about it? I said, nothing's going to change, the way I look at it. I said, and I love my daughter-in-law, and I actually made her my assistant to me on the tribal council because she does such an awesome job, with family functions and.
And it's so amazing having a parent who understands. See,
Right.
my mom was. It was funny. I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast. When I told my mom, she started to cry. So I thought, uh-oh. And she was a very liberal-minded person. So
Right.
I'm thinking, oh, what is she crying about? She goes, I said, you don't love me anymore, Mom? And she says, no, I'm not crying for that. I'm crying because I'm never going to have grandchildren. She was more worried about the kids.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I said, oh, well, Mom, maybe I'll adopt one day. But I never ended up doing that.
Yeah.
But, anyway, Dana, do you have anything to say about that?
I have family up there, and I was talking to them about this. There are just so many issues, and being gay, trans, whatever, isn't an issue.
Of course not. Yeah.
It's not. And, people are trying to survive. They were dealing with poverty. They're trying to put meals on the table. They're looking for jobs. They're not worried about that. It's, there's just issues. They have issues. This is not an issue. That's all I can say.
Right. Well, thank you both for being allies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we like I think I mentioned this before the podcast, that all the marginalized people have to vote as a block.
Right.
Because we need to take control of this hatred that's spreading in this country. And I think, having awareness of Native issues, LGBT issues, African American issues, Latino issues, et cetera,
Right.
all the way down, that will make us a more cohesive country, I think.
Right.
And obviously liberal white people as well. I mean, we need allies of all kinds. And thank you again for being allies, because I without you guys, we wouldn't have had our marriage rights and all that stuff. So.
I'm worried that it's going to be taken away, though.
Oh, me too. And that's why we need to vote.
Right.
That's why we're all going to be running to the ballot box this
Yes.
November.
Right.
Anyway, so unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Oh,
wow.
Are you sad? I'm sad.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to tell our listeners that if they want to contact, find out more information about your communities, we have the Pine Point Community Council. Is that right?
Right.
Yep.
We have the Rice Lake Community Council and the
Nadawash.
Nadawash
Community
I'll spell it
Council.
Naytahwaush. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's also the Nadawash Community Council. You could find them on Facebook.
Right. Those are the more isolated communities on the reservation. They're not on the main drag. We're talking 15, 20 minutes, 40 minutes away from Highway 59. If that is too far for somebody to want to drive and drop off clothing, whatever, call them, maybe send gift cards. The other option is to contact one of the community councils on the communities on Highway 59. You have Ogama, you have Waban, you have White Earth, which is probably just a few miles off. Monoman, you have Callaway Community Council. The other option is Jackie Bernacki. Henry mentioned her. She runs 3 or 4 parishes up there. One of them is St. Philip's in Rice Lake.
Yep.
She's always in need. Columba, is it Columba in White Earth?
Yep.
Okay.
St. Columbo.
And then Pine Point, which that is closed right now doing a mold. But she's still going out there. That's all I know. I don't get up there enough. The other option is here in the cities. Not only was I helping White Earth, I was helping with the communities down here, Division of Indian Works. Contact the food shelf, see what they need. They have select hours. Feel free to drop off. Diapers and formula were top of their needs. Homeward Bound shelter. Ask for Dave Goodman. Call and ask for Dave Goodman. If you can't get a hold of them, I would say stop in between 9 and 12. They're always looking for brand new undergarments, brand new socks. They're looking for adult clothing only. Make sure they're washed. They're going to need winter coats coming up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big
So-
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And blankets.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I want to thank you both so much for sharing your time with us on the Downright Upright Show. I think it's pronounced Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. Okay, I'm sorry.
And then
Forgive me.
also in the native Ojibwe language, there's no word for goodbye.
Oh,
So they always say, Gego wabamin minawa.
roughly translated. What would the-
See you again.
See you again. Okay, I like that better. Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you for spending time with us today. And please stay tuned for more of the Downright Upright Show in the future. And this is Philip Anthony. And I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful rest of their summer and see you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.